Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's the CJ. I want to welcome you guys back to episode 9 of my 120 gallon reef system. Now, I'm no longer going to refer to this as my brand new 120 gallon because, let's be honest guys, this tank stopped being brand new about 5 months ago when I first purchased it and it got to my house. Keep in mind, it's been 5 months of planning, building, and executing everything up until this point to where I can finally say the tank is cycled and I can finally start adding fish. So the point of this update is to kind of walk you guys through the entire cycling process and everything that happened from 2 weeks until today. Basically, ever since I turned the lights on and this tank started to actually mature and go through all the phases of ugly and nasty stuff that a lot of people in the hobby, are not prepared to deal with or just don't want to look at. So I'm gonna give you guys the secret sauce to getting rid of diatoms and to getting through the cycle as fast and as efficiently as possible. So let's get to it. Now, as I mentioned before in episode 8, I let this tank cycle as natural as possible, meaning I did not add anything. No bacteria in the bottle, no ammonia, no dead raw shrimp, no ghost feeding the tank, nothing. All I did was add some seeded pine matrix media from the JBJ that I still had running and allowed the Pucani rock to break down all of the dead organics that were dried up on it and provide that ammonia source. So 6.5 weeks later, I reached the point to where the tank is cycled. But keep in mind, cycling the tank is, it's 2 phases. The first phase is the nitrogen cycle, the denitrifying bacteria, growing and developing. The second stage is turning on the lights and finally letting that boogeyman out of the closet, also known as the diatom and the hairy algae bloom in your system. Now, the funny thing about diatoms, they don't stop and they escalate very, very quickly. Within 3 hours of me turning on the lights, they started covering the rock. Within 3 days, the whole tank was covered. But these next 3 clips of the same rock, I'm going to kind of show you guys the process of how it changed over this 1.5 weeks or 2 weeks. And the secret to getting rid of diatoms, if you guys are wondering, don't touch anything. Don't touch the rock, don't stir the sand, don't do a water change, just let it do its thing. And I promise you guys the diatoms will always disappear on their own. That's exactly what happened in this tank. That brown looking color disappeared and I was left with this nice luscious hair algae left over. So someone may be wondering, why is this even happening after the diatoms disappeared? Well, each situation is unique, guys. If you started with dried Pucani rock like me and you didn't acid bathe it or do anything to dissolve those organics, everything that helped me cycle this tank has now turned into a source of nutrients, or basically algae fertilizer trapped in all the pores and crevices of this rock. So every spot that it's growing is pretty much a nutrient deposit in the tank. So the best way to get rid of it is naturally, meaning when the algae grows, pluck it out of the system, let it flow down through your filter sock and get rid of it and just remove it from the water. Every time you remove algae, you are basically removing all of the nutrients that it's sucked up to grow and just getting it out of your tank. Now, could I have avoided this by doing different rock? Yes. Could I, throw all kinds of chemicals in here to try to kill the algae? Yes, you could, but why do that? The goal of this tank is to let it happen as naturally as possible. And if getting my hands in the tank for the next few weeks, few months, and also, recruiting some help via cleanup crew or tang eating, algae eating tangs, that's pretty much going to be the plan. So I just want to share with you guys phase 3, and this part may take a few months. Now, I'm attacking these nutrients in 2 ways. The first way is physically. I just showed you guys that, removing the algae from the system, removing the detritus through filter flaws, getting it out. The second way is removing what's trapped in the water column, meaning those free-floating nutrients that you can actually detect on your test kits. And the best way to do that is with a water change. Keep in mind, this is the first water change I've ever done on a tank this size. So I had to kind of come up with a few ways of doing it. And for those wondering what's up with the salt, I decided to stick with reef crystals. The primary reason is, for one, I've used it for the entire time in the hobby, and 2, it's just available locally to me. Every store I go to has reef crystals. No stores locally have HW marine salt or the Seachem salinity salt. So if I got in a pinch and needed salt as an emergency, I wouldn't have those available, and that's pretty much the main reason I stuck with the reef crystals. So what's the plans for water changes, you guys might be wondering? Well, it's simple, guys. At least the immediate future, I have 3 things in mind. The first is taking care of this sand bed. I never rinsed this sand when I added it to the tank, had a huge sand cloud and dust and debris and everything else. So with 40-gallon water changes, it gives me plenty of time to siphon the entire sand bed. Basically, anything that's light enough to float and be siphoned out, I'm just removing it out of the system. And it definitely cleaned up the sand very, very nicely for me. Now, the second thing I wanted to accomplish was getting the parameters squared away and getting them even with reef crystals. Switching from Instant Ocean normal salt, the purple bucket, to reef crystals, the orange stuff, the parameters are totally different. They're a lot higher in reef crystals, and I want to make sure the tank is on par with a bucket of reef crystals before I start adding corals and invertebrates and things that actually depend on stable parameters. So the third and final goal is going to be all about nutrient export. Keep in mind, I want to accomplish as much as I can before I fully stock this tank, because major swings in nutrients and phosphates and nitrates all had negative effects on corals. So the goal is to get these water changes done, export as much as I can before I stock the tank. Now, for some of you guys wondering, what else is helping with this? Well, of course, the Algae Scrubber, guys. When I checked my phosphates a few weeks ago, when the tank was cycling, phosphates were very, very high at around 0.51. After this water change, and after help from this Algae Scrubber breaking in, the skimmer breaking in, my phosphates have dropped all the way down to 0.12 and are steadily declining. So I'm definitely trending in the right direction. Am I going to say it's one thing factoring more than the other? Of course not. I think it's a combination of me removing the algae scrubber, water changes, all of the above working together, and it's definitely getting me to where I want to be. So after 5 months of preparing this tank for fish, planning out the build, rebuilding the sump twice, the plumbing, the floating canopy, the aquascaping, the cycling of the system, the replacing of the GFCI outlets behind the tank, everything that went into this, the day has finally come with fish floating and acclimating for the system. So can't tell you guys how excited I am to finally be able to see things swimming around in this tank. And for those that have been subscribed to me, have been waiting and waiting and waiting, hey, I appreciate you guys. You've watched me go from, the cichlid tanks to the marine land tank to the JBJ, and then finally this tank. And my goal is to make this my best work yet. I really see the brightest days ahead for this system, but this is going to be a 1 to 2 year plan. So for those that want that instant gratification, you're definitely not going to find it here, but you will find a fully documented journey showing you guys every step of the way. So this is a pretty good point to stop the vid. I know some of you guys are thinking, damn man, we didn't get to see the fish. Promise you guys, episode 9, we're going to cover everything fish related, acclimation, quarantining, stock list plans, all of the above. But I do have a quick question for you guys. Live streams versus recorded videos. What do you like better? Do you like both? Do you want to see rewinds of live streams, or will you just prefer me to put time and effort into these updates? I'm curious on you guys' thoughts, so hit the poll in the top right and let me know. But other than that, hey, you guys like, comment, subscribe. You guys do what y'all do. Y'all be easy and happy reefing.